All right. Good evening. My name is Ashley Woodson, and I'm the Dean of the School for Public Purpose and Professional Advancement at Albion College. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm here to introduce Mark Newman, our Vice President for Institutional Advancement, who will introduce our speaker, but don't worry, you will see me again for question and answer. Have a wonderful event.
Good evening. Good evening. It is an honor to be here tonight to host the Quest for Community in Urban America with Pastor Corey Brooks. We are sponsored tonight by Intercollegiate Studies Institute and our friends at Castor Concepts. I must say, Pastor Brooks has family members. Some of my family members are from Chicago who attend his church. They don't always, we joked earlier, they don't always agree with him, but they are loyal to the church and loyal to the mission. So Pastor Corey Brooks is the founder and senior pastor at New Beginnings Church of Chicago and founder and CEO of Project H.O.O.D, Community Development Corporation. He has become a leading voice in the fight against violence gripping Chicago's poorest neighborhood. And this is not just Chicago, this is around the country. He established New Beginnings Church in Chicago in November 2000, in the heart of Chicago's most dangerous community. The opportunity was his first glimpse into the despair of inner city communities. Pastor Brooks' effort received national acclaim when he spent 94 days living on the roof of a rundown motel located across the street from his church. I hope Pastor Brooks kept that tent and those hand warmers, because from what I hear, he's going back up to the top of the building, and we're going to have to pray for him while he's up there. It has become, the building had become the center of drugs, prostitution, and violence. Within 3 months, he raised enough money to buy the building, tear it down. The land is now earmarked to become the location of a $23 million state-of-the-art community center. So we're talking community redevelopment. Pastor Brooks and his wife, Delilah, have fully invested in the community of Woodlawn on Chicago's South Side. He and his wife are spearheading a community initiative called Project H.O.O.D to revitalize the neighborhood. Through it, they are raising a new generation of peacemakers, problem solvers, and change agents. Current Project H.O.O.D programs include a core carpentry program, which places participants in entry-level construction jobs, post programs in entrepreneurship, and separate business workshops for aspiring and new business owners. A co-working office space for business owners, job placement programs, and community-wide events, including the world's largest baby shower. Pastor Brooks attended Ball State University, the University of Florida, and the Dallas Theological Seminary, and Grace Theological Seminary. He has been pastoring since 1990. Many of you know that I came to Albion. We've been here 6 months. I come from the HBCU world, and many of our campuses have the same plight as other campuses in other communities in America. I enjoy working at Albion because of a liberal arts education. Liberal arts education it's diverse. It's about listening to others and listening to others' points of views, even though sometimes you may not agree with them. I got that from my cousin herself, who got it from her pastor. But tonight's dialogue is about change. It's about job creation. It's about how we affect our community. So we appreciate all of you who come out tonight to listen to somebody I'm going to call a friend because he knows my family, Pastor Corey Brooks. So everybody, Pastor Corey Brooks.
Thank you. Hello, Albion. Thank you for allowing me tonight to spend some time with you to talk about issues that are very dear to my heart. It's my prayer and hope that you'll be blessed by our gathering and our discussion tonight. I want to talk about tonight the quest for community in urban America. The quest for community in urban America. As a pastor on the south side of Chicago, I've seen both the negative effects and the positive effects. The negative effects of the lack of community, violence, crime, carelessness. I've also witnessed the positive effects of the presence of community, like transformation and care and compassion and concern. But first tonight, I think it's important that we define, when I talk about community, what exactly is community and what exactly do I mean as a conservative talking about community. When I discuss community, I'm saying it is distinct from neighborhood. Instantly, when we talk about community, most of us think about neighborhood. But when I talk about community tonight, I'm not talking about neighborhood. A neighborhood is a group of people who live near one another. They're close in proximity. That's a neighborhood. But a community is more than that. It's more than just people living close to one another. It's about people being connected. It's about people having emotional connections and relationships with fellow citizens. It's about exhibiting care and compassion and concern for other individuals. So as I talk about community tonight, I want you to have that in mind. And the reason why it's so important is because in this day and time in which we live, partisan divides in our country want us to focus on us versus they. And everywhere we see, it's us versus they mentality. Conservatives against liberals, liberals against conservatives, Democrats against Republicans, blacks against white. It's always an us versus they mentality. But the reason why I want to talk about community is because community transcends partisan divides. Community transcends racial divides. Community transcends financial divides. Being able to relate to someone as a fellow human being or a fellow child of God reduces the toxicity of our political battles. Most of the political battles that we are experiencing, it is because we have not yet learned how to have community with one another. Matter of fact, many studies have shown how the erosion of the community at all levels can be traced to the desire for more and bigger government. Isn't that interesting? Robert Nesbitt was a pioneer in this area of thinking back in the early 1950s. And today we're able to see the cause and the effect of this type of thinking. When I first came to Chicago in 1995, I immediately knew what the problem was in the neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. The problem was a lack of community. And the absence of community, you have an influx of gangs, you have individuals overtaking neighborhoods that ought not overtake them because there's no sense of community. When it's just a neighborhood, anybody can be in charge. Anybody can take over and do anything. It becomes full of rampant, unharnessed wickedness in a neighborhood. But a community offers much more than that. Matter of fact, the neighborhood was named one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country. The neighborhood where I live and where I love. It was the most dangerous neighborhood, not just in Chicago, but one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the country. It was so dangerous that I tell people wherever I go, it was dangerous in broad daylight. Crime could jump off, anything could happen in broad daylight. The homicide rate was sky high, drugs were rampant, and this was not the type of neighborhood that families wanted to move into. It was a neighborhood where people were desperate to escape. Thus, our journey of transformation from a neighborhood to a community started. And this journey, this process, it started with using conservative principles. And I want to say that because it's important that we understand that all black folk don't think alike. Especially in Chicago, there's this mindset that if you're going to be in Chicago, you have to be a Democrat, you have to be liberal, and you have to do it the way we do it unless you're an Uncle Tom. But I want to challenge that viewpoint tonight and tell you that there is a mindset that we are using and that we're in the process of trying to develop that we're using right in the hood on the south side of Chicago, good conservative principles. And when I say that, somebody's going to ask, what do you mean by conservative principles? Because conservative principles can be different for different people. So I need to tell you what I mean when I talk about using conservative principles to transform a neighborhood into a community, because I think it's very important that we understand. When I talk about conservatism and using it in a community to transform it, one, I'm talking about individual freedoms. So what we use at Project H.O.O.D, we teach people about individual freedoms, free speech, freedom of religion, the ability to pursue happiness and own property, the freedom to defend yourself and your family, liberties. I'm talking about the principles of limited government. We don't want government all up in our business all the time. We don't want government making it difficult for us to create businesses. We don't want government taking all of our money in our neighborhood so that we cannot develop the neighborhood. We want limited government. We want limited government because we don't believe that Superman is going to come in and save our community. That if our community is going to be saved, it's going to be up to the people who live there. So we take responsibility and we do not choose to depend on any government entity, limited government. We talk about the rule of law. We believe that the rule of law is important, that moral order is important. We believe that we are made, that moral law and order are made for humanity, and humanity is made for it. Because if you don't have a moral order, if you don't have law and order in a community like ours, gangs will take over. Drugs will run throughout the whole neighborhood. Children will not be able to play. And we experience all of that on the south side of Chicago. When I talk about conservatism, I'm talking about fiscal responsibility. We try to teach people that, listen, it is your responsibility to stay out of debt. It is your responsibility to learn about financial situations. It is your responsibility to take responsibility for your financial status in life, and you have to do that. So we teach conservative fiscal responsibility. We teach free market capitalism. And I want to say that because there are some who believe that capitalism is a racist idea. But I'm telling you as a black man on the south side of Chicago that I don't believe that capitalism is a racist idea. Capitalism is an American idea, and I thank God for capitalism. Because capitalism allows people to create, it allows people to create jobs, it allows people to create businesses, and it's those jobs and those businesses that we need in our community. And if we don't have them, we're going to continue to experience the same things that we face all the time. When I talk about conservative principles in our neighborhood being used through Project H.O.O.D, I'm talking about human dignity, that all men, all women are created equal, that every life has value. And we judge people not by race. Let me just tell you, at Project H.O.O.D, we're on the south side of Chicago, but we don't care if you're green. We don't care what color you are, because we don't judge people by race. And in America and in this day and time, that is one of the things that is holding us back, because everything we do is always based upon race. Does racism exist? Yes. Will it exist? Yes. But we have to get beyond racial identity, bringing human dignity to us. And so at Project H.O.O.D, we teach people that, listen, your race is not the most important thing in your life. We teach people that your value and who you are is not based upon what gang you were in, or what neighborhood you were in, or who your mama is, or where you came from, or what school you went to. Whether you're an AKA or an Alpha or a Delta, it does not matter. Whether you're a Masonic or not, none of that holds any value. We judge people not by their financial position. So at Project H.O.O.D, we tell people that the only thing that matters is character. Who are you when no one is looking? Who are you when there are no police around? Who are you when there are no parents around? Who are you when your spouse is not around? Character is what matters. And so in the hood where I live, on 66 and King Drive, where they said in 2012 the Chicago Sun-Times was the most dangerous block in the city. We teach gangbangers that what matters most is character. And we don't care if you've been to jail. We don't care about the crime you committed. We want to know, what are you going to do from this point on? It's all about character. And it's those conservative principles that we beat over and over and over and over again. And it's with these principles in mind that we created Project H.O.O.D. Project H.O.O.D. H.O.O.D. stands for Helping Others Obtain Destiny. In 2010, there was a young man by the name of Carlton Archer. Carlton Archer was an athlete. He was a good student in school. He was a member of our congregation. He participated in our youth group. He went to Refuge, which is every Friday night, where we have over 200 young teenagers that come, and we fellowship with them. We teach them the gospel. We allow them to be free and be teenagers in a peaceful place. And Carlton Archer was part of that. But Carlton also had a different life that none of us even knew about. His parents didn't even know. Carlton was participating in gangs. And not only was Carlton Archer participating in gangs, but Carlton Archer was what we call a shooter. He was being sent out on missions. What does that mean? That means that there were other kids in other parts of the neighborhood, and they would send Carlton on a mission to shoot at the other kids. They even had the audacity in our neighborhood to call kids who do not agree ops, opposition. It's kind of like when you're a Democrat and you see a Republican, you say, that's my op. Or you see you're a Republican and you see a Democrat, that's my op. So Carlton was one of these young boys that they would send off on a mission to shoot and kill people his own age in our neighborhood. But something happened. Carlton was shot down and killed on the way to basketball practice in the back of his house by his parents' garage. And I never will forget when his mother and father came to me. If you can imagine your only son, your 16-year-old son, your namesake, being shot down and killed in the back of your home, and you didn't even have a clue that he was participating in gangs, and you're distraught, you're broken. And with tears in our eyes, his mother and father sitting in front of my desk, his mother wipes the tears from her eyes. And I never will forget, she says to me, Pastor, we love you. We love the church. But we can't have Carlton's funeral at this church. Because, Pastor, if we have the funeral at this church, gangs are going to come from the other neighborhood, and something bad will probably happen. And I told her, listen, Sister Archer, I know how you feel, but I've been having funerals of gangbangers for years at this church. Just this year alone, I told her I'd done over 20 funerals of young black men between the ages of 16 and 25. None of them were reporting in the newspaper. Nobody said a word about them. And I said, listen, nothing is going to happen. I assure you of it. I promise you. And they went ahead and yielded. And we went ahead and we had the funeral. And I never shall forget, just like she said it would happen. The kids from the other neighborhood were coming in, and you're only talking about a 4-block radius. Kids from 4 blocks away were walking to our church, block by block. And as they crossed King Drive, coming over to our church, a semi-automatic gun sounded. And I don't know if you've ever heard a semi-automatic gun, but it's not something that you want to see or you want to hear being used on innocent people. The gun just went off and all of these bullets are going off, but thankfully, no one is shot, no one is hurt, no one is killed. People are screaming and running, it's hectic. All of a sudden the police come, it's chaos. We're finally able to get things calmed down. And we were finally able to go ahead and have the funeral, even after all of that. And at that funeral, my heart was so broken because I made a promise to this woman we were going to do something. Keep them peaceful. Keep the environment peaceful. And that promise was broken. And I never shall forget, at the end of the funeral, something happened to me that had never happened before. I don't know whether you believe in God or not, I do. Something happened to me that had never happened before. I felt the nudge of what I call the Holy Spirit. And I've gotten older now, so I know those nudges. There used to be a time in my life where I'd get a nudge and I wouldn't even listen, but now I'm a little older, and I know to listen to the nudge. And the nudge was just real simple, that there were young brothers that had brought guns into the church, and that I needed to do something to get those guns. And sure enough, I knew that there were probably young brothers in there that had guns illegally. And I needed to be responsible enough to make sure that we get those guns out of the hands of young black men so that they do not destroy the lives of other young black men, so that we don't have another mother who's crushed and another father who's burdened. So I stood up at the end of the funeral with the much boldness as I could muster up. And I said, listen, there are some brothers in here who have brought guns. And I believe that God has given me an instruction to tell you today to turn in your gun. And if you walk out this church without doing it, you're going to be dissing him. And if you can diss God, then he's going to diss you. So you got an option today. And then I leaned over to the sergeant of police who was there, and I said, listen, we do gun buybacks. We do gun turn-ins for illegal guns so that no one is arrested, no one is taken to jail as a result of turning in their gun. Can I have one right now? She nodded, yes, Pastor. I said, listen, I'm going to pray. And at the end of this prayer, I want you to bring your gun. So I said a prayer, and I meant every word. I prayed with as much passion and anointing and belief and faith that I could get mustered up. And I really believed that guns were going to be turned in. At the end of the prayer, I said, amen. And I really thought it was going to be like, I tell people, like, you ever seen a Billy Graham revival back in the day? They had those Billy Graham, and people would just rush down to the altar and just give their life to the Lord. I thought it was going to be like a revival, but it wasn't. It was silent. A hush was over the whole entire audience. Over 1,000 young people were sitting in that church. And for about 30 seconds, I'm standing there with tears rolling down my eyes, in quiet, looking at the faces, seeing the hurt, seeing the trauma, seeing the pain, seeing the policies that have been put in our community to put us in such a position of being victims and not victorious, for 30 seconds. Then all of a sudden, a young man with locks, t-shirt, pants hanging off his butt, he stands up, pulls up his t-shirt, pulls out a 9mm Glock, turns it in. On the other side, another young man stands up, turns in his illegal gun. Another young person stands up, turns in their illegal gun. At the end, we're walking out the door of the church of the funeral, and the police officer, the same sergeant, stops and says, Pastor, thank you so much. We found this gun underneath one of the seats. And the gun had on it what's called a switcher. A switcher is just a switch that you push on the gun in our neighborhood to cause it from being a gun that just shoots one time to a gun that shoots 30 times with just one pull of a trigger. And I knew right then, I've been in this neighborhood allowing these policies to permeate and advance in our community and not saying a word. I've been in this community and not doing as much as I can. And I said, God, whatever you want me to do from this point on, I'm going to do it. I'm all sold out. Whatever it takes for transformation, I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to do it. I don't care how different my viewpoints are. I don't care if they call me an Uncle Tom. I don't care if they call me a sellout God. If you tell me to do it, I'm doing it. And as I would walk out the door to the church, about 50 feet, I look across the street and I see this old motel that was there because of sex trafficking. It was there for prostitution. It was being used by the gang called the Black Disciples, who had a stronghold on our neighborhood. And I saw that motel for what it was, destruction, for what it was, making us victims, powerless. I saw it for what it was. And I got that nudge again. Go up on top of that roof of that motel and stay there till you raise enough money to purchase it and tear it down, and then start building a community center to teach the principles and the values that you so believe in. And so I told my staff, I told my family what I was going to do, and everybody thought I was crazy. But I went up on top of the roof of that motel on November the 20th, and I stayed there, refusing to come down. And the only time I did come down was for a young boy who had gotten shot at a church's chicken. The New York Times heard that I was coming down, and they came and covered the story. It was the only time I came off the roof. And I stayed there all the way till February 24th, until we raised enough money to purchase it and tear it down. And while I was on that roof, we created and gave birth with conservative principles to Project H.O.O.D, helping others obtain destiny. And so what did we do with Project H.O.O.D? We started programs to foster community. We started programs to take us from having just a neighborhood and a bunch of false thinking. We started programs that would empower us, programs like construction, because we understood that these young men needed opportunity, that these young men needed alternatives, that everybody who's in a gang is not in a gang just because they want to be in a gang. Sometimes they're in a gang because they feel like they have no choice, and they feel like they don't have anybody that's going to encourage them and push them, and because they've taken on a victim mindset. So we offer construction classes. We go get guys and ladies out of gangs, and we put them in construction. And we teach them that you're responsible for yourself. No one is going to save you but you. You have to put in the work. No government assistance is going to ever get you out of your poverty. You have to do it. And they take hold of it. We have electrical programs where we just graduated our first all-women's class, 20 students. Yes, for all women. Most of them single parents, single mothers, because we teach them the dignity of work. And we teach them the dignity of, listen, I don't have any problem with welfare. My mama was on welfare for a minute. The problem is when you stay on welfare for a lifetime. So we teach people that, listen, welfare is never created so that you can build a future off of it. Welfare was created to help you get to the next stage at life. And baby, this is the next stage. This class you're in, this is your dignity. This class you're in, this is the way you get out of poverty. Not by waiting on a check from any government entity, because they never will teach you how to survive and make it. You have to learn how to do it yourself. So here are some financial literacy classes to go along with it, to teach you how to read while they're taking so many taxes out of your check because they got such a big government in your neighborhood. To teach you why your schools are horrible and you're paying all this tax money. We teach those principles in the neighborhood. Construction, electrical, financial literacy, and we teach entrepreneurship. Because I believe I'm not waiting on Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Quaker Oats to come and establish businesses in my neighborhood. Because if they were going to do it, they would have done it by now. So I'm not waiting on them. I teach people, listen, you have to take authority for your own life and for your neighborhood, and you can do it. You are just as smart as the person who started Coke. You are just as smart as the person who started Pepsi. You are just as smart as the person who, all the chicken that we make, and we can't even start a Popeyes. Come on, help me, somebody. But you need conservative principles driving it and driving it and driving it into people. So that's what we do. We teach entrepreneurship. We teach all of these things to bring about neighborhood transformation, to turn it into a community. If you ever get the chance to come visit us, you'll see that the principles work. Because I hear you thinking real loud. And you're asking the question, how do we know your principles work? If you come and visit us, I'm going to introduce you to Twin Barney. He has a brother. We call him Twin Barney because he has a brother named Vollmer, the Volker twins. They were the largest drug dealers in our neighborhood. But when Twin Barney got out of jail, Al Mack, who had went through our programs, brought him to us. And we told him, listen, you're not allowed to sell drugs in this neighborhood. We're transforming this neighborhood. And either you get with our program or you get away from the street, our programs. That's just the way it is. Now Twin is one of our best mentors. He's got his own business, transportation business, without using any drug money, but just teaching him hard work and principles. And if you look up an interview on Fox, you can see me and him, and he tells this story that he earns more money now doing it the right way. Hard work, responsibility, and accountability than he did doing it the illegal way. Come visit us. You can meet Jeff Boyd, who spent 30 years in prison. Now he does reentry programs. You can meet James Highsmith, who in the 70s and the 80s was one of the biggest gang guys in the neighborhood. He now runs our violence prevention work. We have 12 full-time employees, 4 from each gang, 3 from each gang, 4 of the gangs, who work for us full-time to stop the violence, to stop the trauma, and they teach these principles. We have a leadership academy called Progressive Leadership Academy. It's an alternative high school for kids who have been kicked out of school, 16 to 21-year-olds, and we teach them these principles. And our kids are graduating at a higher rate than any other alternative high school in Chicago. Why? Because we teach these conservative principles. COVID has impacted community dramatically, especially where we live. All the self-distancing, the social distancing, and the shutting down of this and that, and I'm not trying to argue any of that. I'm just saying that it's impacted community. And so we've had to work very hard to make sure that even during the pandemic, that we keep our community intact, that we don't go back to being a neighborhood where we're committing crimes and violent against one another, where we're treating each other without love and dignity and respect. And we've had to work really hard. And so we've had to do things like getting everybody in our neighborhood together and say, listen, what's the biggest problem? Okay, the food problem. I don't know how it's been here in Albion, but in Chicago during the pandemic, one of the most difficult things was food. And so what we did is we got the community together, all the gangs, and we said, listen, we together collectively have to put down the guns and work together to feed everybody. We called Quaker, we called Pepsi, we called all of these companies and corporations, and we said we need food to help people. And during the pandemic, we were able to serve over 1.8 million pounds of food. We would have never been able to do that just being a neighborhood, but being a community deciding that regardless of your race, your political affiliation, regardless of any of that, that we were going to be a community. A key word in community, unity. That we were going to be together. We are better together. We may not all think alike. We definitely don't all look alike, because I know I'm probably the most handsome guy up in here right now. So we don't all look alike, but we can lay aside our differences to make America better, to make Albion better, to make the world a better place. I'm a preacher, so I want to close with just a little preach. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 25 and 27 says this. This is the Apostle Paul. Listen to what he says. The way God designed our bodies is a model for understanding our lives together. Every part dependent on every other part. Wow. The parts we mention and the parts we don't. I don't know if anybody is missing a toe, but I've heard that even though you can't see it because it has a sock and it has a shoe covering it, that you don't want to, it's a very difficult thing to do, to keep balance and to walk like you always walk without. Even the little parts that are unseen and unknown are important. And we all need to understand that. Verse 26 says, the parts we see and the parts we don't. If one part hurts, every part is involved in the hurt and in the healing. If one part flourishes, every other part enters into the exuberance. Then he says, you're the body, Christ's body. That's who you are. You must never, he says, forget this. Only as you accept your part of that body does your part mean anything. So I don't need any government entity to tell me my identity. I'm important. Ecclesiastes 4:9, Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, this is what he said. It's better to have a partner than to go it alone. Share the work. He says, and if one falls down, the other helps. But if there's no one to help, tough. Two in bed warm each other. Alone you may shiver at night. By yourself you're unprotected. With a friend, you can face the worst. Can you round up a third, he asked? Because a third strained rope isn't easily snapped. What they're saying is that we have all got to figure out how to get along together. You don't have to think like me, but don't dismiss me because I'm a black conservative. And I won't dismiss you because you're white. And let me just say for the record, this is not part of what I'm supposed to say. And I know someone may get mad and you may never invite me back, but it's cool. But I just feel I need to say this. Every white person isn't racist. And anybody who tries to make you believe that is so far in error. And every system in America isn't racist. You can say what you want to. America is the most beautiful place in the world. We may have problems. We may have some flaws. But I'd rather live in America than any other place in the world. So let me close with Jesus, because then maybe you'll forgive me. Jesus in John chapter 17, he sees the disciples, who are all different, by the way. Some are business owners. Some are just some country boys. Some are some city slickers. Some are some high-impact players in the community. Some are just plain old fishermen on the bay. And Jesus looks at them. He's getting ready to go. And of all the things that he could have prayed for them, he could have prayed, give them a job, give them more money, give them wealth, give them more wisdom. You know what Jesus said? Father, make them one. Then he looks down the corridors of time and he sees the community of Albion, the differences. He sees all of the issues and situations you're faced with. And guess what Jesus says about Albion? You're in the text. Father, make them one. And I believe this, that the devil in hell wants us to be everything but that, because that's exactly what the Lord wants us to be. And I'm so glad when I get to heaven, and I know I'm going, it's not going to be any black sections over there, hood section. Ain't going to be no white wealthy section over there. Ain't gonna be no Hispanics over there. Everybody off in their own splinter groups. But when we all get to heaven, we're gonna all be one. So why not practice on earth what we'll be doing in heaven? God bless you, God keep you, and if I never see you again, peace, I'll see you in heaven.
Thank you, Pastor Brooks. At the beginning of the talk, note cards and pens were handed out. If you have questions that you'd like me to read to Pastor Brooks, please give those to the SPP team. SPP team members, can you raise your hands? And they will be around to collect the note cards. And I have a few as we get started. Pastor Brooks, as you probably know, your thriving ministry is an anomaly.
Yeah.
Because Black church attendance is declining all around the country. Can you speak to some of the reasons that you think you hold that unique position?
First of all, let me thank Dr. Woodson, who does her job so well. She's new to your community, but she is very smart and intelligent. So let's give her a round of applause and thank her.
Thank you, Pastor Brooks.
But I believe that one of the reasons why we see churches declining, Black, white, Hispanic churches declining, the churches declining in America, is because we're not keeping the main thing the main thing. And we get so involved in all of the other trappings of the world that we forget that the main thing is sharing the gospel. And if all churches would keep the main thing, we would be so much better off. That does not mean we shouldn't participate in making the community better places, because even Jesus, when he saw the multitude and they were hungry, he fed them. And he said, then he dealt with the message. So I understand that we have to do things in our community, but we got to keep the main thing the main thing. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is the church just has to be more loving. One of the reasons why I get a little respect, even from people who may have a difference of opinion in Chicago, because in Chicago, I have a very different opinion than most pastors. Our church is very different. But one of the reasons we get so much respect is because we do so much to help people. And I think when churches focus on people and loving people, so we have a saying at our church, and everybody hears me say it all the time. If you come to our church, or if you come to our community, and you're in our presence, and you have any hell in you, we're going to love the hell out of you. That's just how it is. And so I think we got to share the gospel, And we just gotta love people and not be so judgmental and hypocritical, and show people what I call super grace. Super grace is grace over and beyond. And I think if the church, if we could do that as a body, then we'd be a lot better off.
All right. So the education the Project H.O.O.D provides through electricity, construction, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and the Leadership Academy facilitates the kind of personal responsibility that's a core principle of the organization. But it also facilitates the dignity of work and the possibility of meaningful labor. What other forms of education facilitate that transformation?
Thank you. Yeah, we believe in self-responsibility. We believe in the dignity of work, but we also believe in respect. And so one of the things that we really work hard, especially with our guys in the community, is just getting them to respect the dignity of human life. And that's very difficult when you have so much death around you. But getting people to be more community oriented and teaching them to be more respectful of one another is probably been our hardest and most difficult challenge. And that's something that I believe we have to continue to work on. And it's not just a problem in the hood, it's a problem in Albion too. Because wherever you have people and you have differences, people tend not to want to respect one another. And I put respect at a very high level, that even if I disagree with you, I'm not gonna disrespect you. I'm gonna respect you, I'm gonna honor you, and I'm still gonna love you. I just don't agree with you. And so I think that's something that we have to really work on.
All right, so you shared earlier that racial identity is not a pathway to human dignity, but racism has been a way to deny human dignity and access to the personal freedoms that are core to your principles. So in what way does the fight against racism align with the work that you're doing through Project H.O.O.D?
Right. First of all, I think we have to acknowledge the history of America, that we have had racism. No one can argue that we haven't had racism. But I will say that in this day and time, there is nothing that a racist can do to stop me from becoming anything that I want to become or anyone that I want to become. So I tell people, if you want to be racist, man, that's on you, be racist. But in the hood, I tell guys, no one's racism can stop you, because once I acknowledge that someone's racism is stopping me, what I'm really acknowledging is that you have power over me. And I'm a preacher, but I'd be damned if I said anybody have power over me on anything, regardless of your color, because that takes away my dignity. And so we teach people that, listen, don't allow any type of attitude, mindset to make you a victim. And so for me and my conservatism, people who allow racism to have power over them make themselves victims. In this day and time, I'm not speaking in reference to slavery. I'm not speaking in reference to the civil rights. I'm talking about remove from that in this day and time.
All right. What is your response to CRT? And for those who are unaware, CRT, or critical race theory, is a collection of ideas that emerged in the late 1970s in the legal field to articulate that the failures of the 1954 Brown versus Ford desegregation case were indicative of the fact that legal reform would not be sufficient to produce racial equality in the United States. What is your opinion of CRT?
First of all, thank you for allowing me to answer it, because a lot of times people don't want to hear a different view. So what I'm going to express is different than the normal view that you might hear from some black people, not all black people. because I know a lot who think just like me. But I want to piggyback, first of all, off something that she said. CRT was created by a group of about 5 people, rightfully so, to talk about a system, specifically laws that were racially unjust. So CRT looked at those systems to say that these laws are unjust and that they should be changed. No problem with that. Because the law, some of the laws that they were talking about, like voter rights and things like that, they were unjust. They needed to be changed. So CRT looked at the system. But here's what happened. Other identities have come along and attached themselves to something that was originally meant for systems and made it into something that even some of the founders were not talking about. And so you have movements like the Black Lives Matter who have come along and attached themselves to CRT, or the 1619 Project, or Marxist views that have attached themselves, and now it has become something that you don't even know what CRT is. It's kind of like, the only way I can describe it is like this. On the 4th of July, we get these fireworks, right? You know, you get a stick and it's fireworks. So the stick, it's original stick. Then you light the fire and it explodes and it comes out all kinds of different stuff. That's kind of like what CRT is to me. It started off as something, an original something, the study of systems, the study of racist systems. And now people have attached themselves and it has exploded into something that we don't even identify. And so you have people fighting over things that we don't even really know what CRT is. But that's the best way I can answer it. So I don't line up on the CRT side because it's not even what the original founders meant for it to be. That's my own personal thought.
All right, and we talked about this earlier. It relates to a question from the audience that asks, and this is a question often asked of Black conservatives, do you feel that you have internalized any of the racist ideals that are present within, that is a paraphrase, that are present within our nation? Do you feel like you have internalized any of the racist ideals that are present within our nation?
No, because if I internalize them, then that would suggest that you're saying that I'm a racist. And I don't even think a Black man can be a racist. That's a whole nother story. So I have not, I've internalized American principles. I've internalized conservative principles, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to take time out in the midst of what I talked about to talk about what are conservative principles, because most people, when you say conservative, most Black people automatically jump to racist white people. But when I say conservative, I don't care what color you are. I'm talking about principles. And principles don't have color. Principles are not, they're principles. And so conservative principles, conservative values to me, that's what I internalize. I'm not internalizing. And let me be very clear, I love being Black. I'm married to a Black woman with Black kids,
Amen.
live in a Black neighborhood in the hood. I serve Black people. I love being Black. And I do everything that I can to help my people. I just have a different viewpoint, especially when I believe that a lot of people have used race and have race-baited people for their own personal agendas. I've seen that in the hood over and over and time again, where they make political agendas and political deals not based upon helping the community, but furthering their own agenda. And so if I've internalized anything, I have internalized the hatred for people taking advantage of black people.
So as a follow-up question, how do you separate conservative principles from some of the venom seen recently from the Republican Party?
Well, first of all, good question. All Republicans aren't conservative, and all conservatives aren't Republicans. That's the first thing. So I think that's the first thing we need to get rid of, is that some of the Republicans that you're seeing displaying some of the attitudes that you see, those are not conservative principles, and those are just as harmful as other principles or other things that I talk about. I would consider those individuals just as dangerous as I feel some individuals are on the far left. I put them all in the same pool. They're anti-American. They're anti-against us being together. There are people on the far right who don't want us to be one. And there are people on the far left who don't want us to be one. But we should be fellow citizens, Americans, all of us working together. But they're both have extremes, but all Republicans are definitely not conservative, for sure. I know that.
All right, so we talked earlier about the insult Uncle Tom as one that communicates often legitimate fears of structures that have exploited black people and of those who pacify claims for justice. What outcomes of Project H.O.O.D do you think demonstrate your commitment to the collective and reject that label of the work that you do?
That's a great question. Again, in my discussion tonight, I try to display examples of individuals that we've had success. And when you take our metrics, and we're very high on metrics, and when I talk about metrics, I'm talking about success rates, I'm talking about, do your programs work? How much money are you spending to make these things happen? Are you getting people jobs? I will guarantee anyone in this room, you will not find in Chicago, not the Urban League, not the NAACP, not Operation Push, any of those individuals that outdo what we do. None of them have the impact. Matter of fact, in 2012, the Chicago Sun-Times wrote that article that we were the most dangerous neighborhood in Chicago. We're not even in our area in the top 30 now. That's not, yeah. So that's not something that we're just saying. That's a fact. That's something that you can go check out and see for yourself. In Chicago, when the murders have been increasing, going up in Inglewood, Roselawn, Austin, Lakeshore area, East, all of these areas, the hundreds where we are, murders have been decreasing. And that's not because we waited on the police. That's not because we waited on Mayor Lightfoot. That's not because we waited on the alderman. That's because of the work that we put in every single day with gangs, with individuals who are likely to be shot or be shooters. And we have caused it to decrease. So when people want to know what impact we have, all they have to do is pull back the covers and look at the facts, and they themselves will have to decide that, yeah, what they're doing works. But let me tell you why people won't in Chicago. Because if they pull back the covers and they start seeing that our stuff works, then they have to start admitting that theirs is not. And when you start admitting that yours is not, then that means you start losing leverage, you start losing ground, you start losing money. And in Chicago, lots of times money to some is more important than lives. But we don't, that's not how we operate. Because I have conservative values, I believe that a life, even if it's a guy in a gang, or even if it's a guy who just got out of prison, I believe that his life is valuable. And so you can't pay me enough to sell out. You just can't. I can't be bought, period. You can't buy me because then that would make me a slave, and I ain't a slave.
So we know about stereotype threat and the idea that if every image I see of myself is a negative one, it ultimately will affect how I perceive myself, the self-fulfilling prophecy. How has the label of the most dangerous neighborhood affect the mentalities and actions of young people in your neighborhood?
Good question. So when there's a popular rap music that's called drill music, and the reason why it's called drill music is because it's about shooting and killing. Matter of fact, we're the only race, black race, that we talk about killing one another, shooting one another. No other genre of music, you won't find country music talking about we're gonna kill the ops and we're gonna kill your mama and kill your daddy and your sister and your brother and rob you and rape you. No other genre of music, not rock music, no other genre. Rap music, drill music. That drill music was originated in our neighborhood, it's called O Block. And the reason why they call it O Block, our neighborhood, is because it was named after O.D. Perry, a guy who was shot and killed. And that mindset and that mentality has permeated throughout a segment of our community, especially with our young people. And so what we have to do is we have to fight very hard to transform the mind, because the battle really does start in young people's mind. So we start early. So we have summer programs, and we try to deprogram. We have a hip hop detox program, and it's not so much that we're telling you don't listen to hip hop. We're just trying to teach you how to not allow the messaging to get into your system, internalize negative thoughts about yourself, about your neighborhoods, about your people. And so it does have an impact when people internalize those viewpoints and those thoughts. And so we have to do everything that we can. So instead of allowing people to call it O Block for O.D. Perry, we start putting up O Block, the sign of the community of opportunity. So we kept the O, we just call it the opportunity block. We're gonna make opportunities, not gangsters. And so it's a hard work, it's a challenging work, and sometimes it's not the work that's most applauded.
Thank you, because I will always nut if you buck. All right, so Huey Newton and the Black Panther Party, some of y'all didn't get that. Huey Newton and the Black Panther Party, they had their 10-point platform, right? A lot of which overlaps with some of what you shared today. We want freedom. We want the power to determine the destiny of our Black and oppressed communities, full employment, honoring past economic legislation, decent housing, education, an end to police brutality, land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and communities' control of modern technology. So since there is so much overlap between what Project H.O.O.D is doing and what the Black Panther Party was doing in Oakland, what are some of the differences where you describe Project H.O.O.D as relying on conservative principles, but Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, Angela Davis, and others would describe the Black Panther Party quite differently?
Well, I don't think they would describe it quite differently. I think if you had Huey P. Newton today, and I say this because I'm very close with Congressman Bobby Rush, who was a Black Panther, and we've talked about these issues. And he says that if Huey P. Newton was alive today, he'd probably be conservative, because all the values that you just said are conservative values, conservative principles. And so I think that sometimes we try to make people something that they have not said themselves, but for our own interests, we try to make them that. Just like we do with Dr. King. Dr. King was a conservative, but people try to make him something else, but he was a conservative. And conservative is not a bad word, so I don't know, but that's my thought.
To be fair, Elaine and Angela, they identify as communists. Some living Black Panthers do identify as other parties. And King was primarily conservative with the exception of his position on the Vietnam War. How can I get children involved whose parents might not have the time, ability, or capacity to participate in their education? And a related question, what can we do to inspire the young people in our community?
Yeah. These are good questions. Especially in Chicago, where we live at, 80% of the households are single-parent households. And so we don't need to demean the single parent. We need to come alongside and assist the single parent, especially if we want young black boys to grow up and be productive. So we have to have entities within our community that do that. But here lies the problem. We are continually waiting on someone outside to come in and fix my boy or fix our sons. We take the position that no, we're going to fix it. We're going to mentor these young boys. We're going to give them examples. We're going to give them fathers. If you come to my house right now, my son is away at Morehouse, but two of his best friends are at my house. And that's because we teach, listen, we have to help young black boys who don't have fathers, and we have to become extended fathers. All of those guys that I named, one of their responsibilities is not only do you have to take care of your kids, and we will make sure you take care of your kids. Don't have any of your mothers calling us and saying you're not paying child support, you're not spending no time with your kids. We don't play that. We'll get on you with that. But not only that, we need you to take some of these kids. So you'll see our guys taking kids to football practice. You'll see our guys going to football games, because we have to take time out to raise them. And I think, and I understand, we are in such a rush in our community to be something or be someone that we forget individuals. And so we have to constantly keep telling people, you got to reach back, you got to reach back, you got to reach back. You can't afford to leave. I have a real problem with black elites. And let me say what I mean when I say that. I went to Ball State, I went to law school, I went to one of the best seminaries. I could have easily just said, let me go out to the suburbs and chill and live a dream. But for me, I feel like it was in my best interest and my people's best interest if I find the worst place. They didn't pick me, I chose where I am. And I think we need more black elites who have been educated, who know that know that the trauma that this child has been through, they know what this child needs. Black elites who have gotten financial wherewithal, they go out and they never ever give back to the community. I have a serious, serious problem with that, but they're the first ones to call somebody racist and to call somebody a name, but they're the very ones who do the least. They don't even, they don't give to organizations, they don't even support I'm an alpha.
I'm a delta.
Yeah, I belong to a fraternity.
I belong to a sorority.
And I support it financially, but I can tell you the thousands and thousands of people who belong to this organization, who have means and money, and they never give a dime. And the black elites, one of the problems in our community, that's the major problem. Black elites.
And I'm also a financial member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. It's important that I note that as well. So intertwined, right, in public discourse right now, racism and capitalism. Dr. Kendi calls them conjoined twins. How did this become the nature of the conversation? How did racism and capitalism become intertwined in so much public discourse? And is there a way to move past this message given the principles that Project H.O.O.D holds?
Right. Let me say first, I don't know how racism and capitalism got intertwined. And I learned from my grandfather, when you don't know something, it's better to say you don't know than to speak about something and then prove that you don't know. So I'm not going to speak to how it got intertwined because I have no clue. But what I can answer is that I've seen the importance and the impact of being a capitalist. of being one who believes in free markets and creating businesses and creating entrepreneurs. And I've also seen, no one has had to tell me, what communism and Marxism, what it brings to the table. If you think that capitalism is not a good thing, all you need to do is look at Venezuela and see how, or look at China. Capitalism is, I believe, the best idea to move people out of poverty, because capitalism gives everybody a chance and an opportunity. Especially now that we have technology, you can start a business, be an Albion, and you selling stuff all over the world. That's because of capitalism. Because of capitalism, I can pull my phone out right now and tell you, this is what my stock portfolio looks like. I own this in this company, this in this company, this in this company. I can pull out my other phone and say, and this is what my Bitcoin currency looks like. I have Bitcoins in this. That's because of capitalism. And I think what has to happen is that as a people, we got to become more financially literate. And the more we become more financially literate about different things, then we'll feel better about being capitalists. But if I'm ignorant about a subject, and if I'm ignorant about capitalism and how it works, then I'm going to always, again, be the victim. And that's the mentality that I hope and pray that I can help people to move out of. I just want to get people away from thinking that capitalist is a white idea. It's an American idea.
You foreshadowed your answer. How do you reconcile a pro-business, limited government perspective with predatory businesses like payday lending that target low-income and predominantly Black areas, particularly those that don't have banks? Why wouldn't government provide protection against these practices?
First of all, anybody who thinks that government is going to protect you, you ought to know by now, government is not trying to protect you on anything. That's the first thing. The second thing is there are individuals practicing. The thing about capitalism is that you're going to always have some bad apples, but it's up to us to identify those bad apples. And it's up to us to teach people. For instance, we have a summer program, and we had 30 young people, 30 teenagers working, and all of them in high school. So most of them from the projects that are next door to us. So we gave them their checks. And 2 times the payroll, I realized when we gave them the check, they all were going down to the currency exchange. And at first, the first time it happened, it didn't click. The second time it happened, I realized they were going to the currency exchange, they were cashing checks, and the currency exchange was taking money from these young people, money that they needed for their families, that they needed for themselves. So what did I do? I didn't say, currency exchange, you are a mean, evil lender, because I believe in free markets. I said, no, I'm going to sit them down and I'm going to teach them, this is what that store is doing, right? Now, this is what we're going to do. This is the option. And I gave them the option, taught them how to be more responsible, more fiscally responsible, how to get a bank account, that if you're a student, you won't have any fees, which means you can go cash your check and they won't take out any money. And you can have that account and they won't take out any fees. And I said, all you need is an adult to sign for you. So anybody who wants to go, I'm going to take you to the bank and I'm going to call your mom and get you a bank account. Now, how many want the option? And every one of those kids, after we taught them what the difference was, they all chose, I want a bank account. And I believe that people, this is the part that I want to get across. I believe that's why I value people. and the value of people. Because I believe even when you teach a gangbanger the difference, they're going to choose what's right. And so it's up to us to teach people when things are wrong, economically speaking, about currency exchange and predatory lending, and then help them to make the right decisions. And I think we don't do that enough. And that's the reason why we teach financial literacy and fiscal responsibility.
That's a powerful nuance that accountability and personal responsibility follow education.
Yes.
Right, and mentorship. You discussed eliminating gun violence. What are some of the causes of gun violence? And as a conservative, what are your opinions on stronger government regulations on the types of guns available to the public?
First of all, I have no problem with anybody having a legal gun. Absolutely none. And if you believe what I believe about government, you need to have your gun. I don't want anybody coming taking nothing from me that I have a legal right to have. So I believe in legal gun ownership. That's the first thing. So I have no problem with people in the hood who have legal guns to protect themselves. We see that every day. Just yesterday, a young gentleman who's running for congressman against Congressman Rush, Jamal Cole, some individuals tried to rob him. But when they tried to rob him, they got surprised. They upped on him, he upped back. They shot at him, he shot back. I have no problem with defending yourself and defending your family. Every person, that's a conservative, every person should have a right to defend themselves. Everybody. But what I have a problem with is when you take your illegal gun and you try to rob me, or you try to commit a murder against me, or you try to hurt my family. That's where we have the problems in our community. We have a lot of young, angry, hostile black men carrying illegal guns. I'm gonna bless you with this statistic. Do you not know that in Chicago, 2 out of every 4 boys between the ages of 16 and 21 have a gun? Illegally. That is not healthy for us. That is not healthy at all. And then you add to it the blatant disrespect for life. That is a catastrophe waiting to happen. So we have to teach people to value life, to value themselves, and not break laws, all which are the principles that I talked about. Moral laws, understanding that there is a law and order. You can't just break this law. And I think it's hard, but you got to keep drilling it and drilling it and drilling it.
All right, so you've talked a lot about problems internal to the Black community and how Project H.O.O.D is situated in relationship to those problems. What are the roles of those who identify as white in this movement?
Right. So I tell everybody, first of all, I don't care what color you are. I just really don't. I don't care. I tell everyone, as far as Project H.O.O.D is concerned, we need 4 things from you. I don't care if you're white, black, yellow. These are the 4 things we say to everybody. 1, we need your time. We need you to spend some of your time, if you can, helping us to develop, helping us figure out programs that help us fix our community. Not telling us what to do, but helping us to do it. We're not asking for a handout, we're looking for a hand up. That's the first thing. Time. Second thing I tell them, we need your thinking. You know, if you have certain things that you're smart in, certain things that you're gifted in, come to Project H.O.O.D and help us with those things. Then I tell them we need your talent. So everybody has been given gifts, skills, talents, and abilities, and we need you to share those gifts, skills, talents, and abilities. And then I tell people we need your treasure. And the reason why we need your treasure is not just because we're trying to get a check from you, But we need treasure, number one, because we don't depend on government. We don't take any government funding, no government funding. We depend on our donors to help us, especially those who believe in what we believe. So we don't take everybody's money, because there are some people who will try to give you money to try to further their own agenda. So we're very particular about the funds that we receive, and we're very clear about this is our agenda and this is what we do. And so we tell people, we need your treasure, we need you to sow, we need you to give, because we believe that God gives blessings to who he can give blessings through. And so that's what we tell everybody. That's what we tell corporate owners. That's what we tell CEOs. And we do that, and we've been blessed to have all races helping us. And that's what I want our organization to be. I don't want an organization that's just all black, all white, all Chinese. I want an organization that looks like America. And I believe in the hood, on the south side of Chicago, that's what we're doing.
What is the role of atheists in the quest for community as you've defined it?
Good question. Again, just like I said about racists, I feel the same way about atheists. As far as, I'm not concerned, the same thing I said about color, not racist, I feel the same way about atheists. I don't care what color a person is, and I don't care what religious background a person is. I'm going to share the gospel with them. I'm going to talk about Jesus. I'm never going to stop doing that. I'm going to always do that. But just because a person is atheist does not mean that they don't have anything to add. So that question is so pertinent, because my mentor, my personal mentor, is an atheist. He does not believe in Jesus Christ, and he definitely does not believe in God. But he's been the best mentor that I've ever had as it relates to how to deal with my family, how to deal with my business, how to deal with relationships with people, and especially in the area of leadership. And not only is he an atheist, he's a white man. And not only is he a white man, he's an Irish white man. Now, that may not mean much to you in Albion, but in Chicago, if you white and Irish, that means something. So I have a mentor, and I love him just like a father. He's almost 80 years old. He loves me. He loves my kids. I love his family, and we get along. And he hears me talk about Jesus. I share Jesus with him. I pray. I do all the things that I was supposed to do. But him being atheist does not stop me from having a relationship with him. And I think if we can do more of that with people, that regardless of how they may think, if we could just love people just because that's what we ought to do, because we're created by God, I just personally just would believe the world would be a much better place. And that's how I feel about anybody, atheist or a believer.
All right, now, Pastor, some very disobedient people text me their questions
Okay.
instead of putting their questions
Okay,
on the
that's
card.
cool.
So I want you to admonish them when you do have time. It was recently announced that you will be going back on a rooftop.
Yes.
When will this happen, and what is your goal?
So I want to invite all of you, just like you invited me here tonight, I want to invite you to Chicago on November the 20th. It'll be our 10th year anniversary. I'm going back up on the roof. You can go to our website, projecthood.org, and you can find out all about it. I'm going back up on the roof we took some train containers and we put them together, and on the front, they're going to build a picture of the center that we're going to build. The center that we're building is upward of $30 million, and they're put those containers together, and I'm going to go on top of the roof of those containers, and I'm going to stay there for 100 days. And I have CEOs from all over America who are accepting the challenge. It's called a CEO challenge, and they're coming up to stay with me at least one night. I have some preachers from all over the country who are coming to stay at least one night. We have some politicians who are coming to stay on the roof at least one night. And so I invite you on November the 20th. We're trying to get as many people as we can to the site. We have some students from Hillsdale that are going to come and camp out, and it'd be great if I can get some students to come from Albion to camp out as well. And so that's on November the 20th, and I'll be on the roof of those containers until the end of February, the last February the 28th. So find one night to come and join me on the roof and help us solve the issues of the world and help us raise enough money so we can build this center.
January 13th sounds like a great night. That's when I'll be in Chicago.
Oh, you're more than welcome. We have a tent, and then we have a guest tent, and then we have a dialogue tent.
And really, that's not my activism nor my ministry. I will not be staying the night.
You can just spend a few hours, stop by.
A few hours. So you haven't been in Albion very long, but you've been across the country. You've been around the world. Friends of the Bohm Theater gave me a mic, so I'm going to spend some of their money. When we invite you back, what would you like to see in Albion?
Right, that's a good question. I thought about this today, how all of these businesses all these vacant buildings are just available on a main corridor. And when I see vacant buildings like that, I see opportunities, and I see jobs, and I see things that can be created. And I think I would love to see more businesses in some of these vacant buildings, especially my heart goes out, and I really mean this when I say this. I grew up in Muncie, Indiana. We have a university there called Ball State University. Just like Albion, Muncie thrived off of the car manufacturing business. GM, Ford, Chrysler, all of them were in Muncie. When I was growing up, everybody's daddy worked at GM, and everybody's, it was booming. And now when I go home, I want to cry because I see the houses are dilapidated, the businesses are closed, the downtown area is just shot, and it's not transitioning. And I think, so when I see Albion, I see Muncie. But the difference, I was telling somebody, the difference about Albion and Muncie is that from the discussions and people that I've talked to, you all are making the transition. You understand that GM is not coming back, and Ford is not coming back, and Chrysler is not coming back. So you realize, okay, the paradigm has shifted, we have to shift too. In Muncie, they're still crying. They're still being a victim. And I don't feel that victim mentality here. I feel the mentality of, we want to change it, we want to do something. And so my biggest prayer is, and I have a second, the biggest prayer is that all of these buildings would be full of thriving businesses and that your community would be booming again. And then the second one is that the next time I come, I would love for this place to be jam-packed, and when I hit the stage, everybody just say, yeah! That's my goal.
All right, I hope I did your words justice. Thank you so much
you were
for
awesome.
sharing the stage with me.
Thank you so
Pastor
much.
Corey Brooks, the pastor of New Beginnings
Thank you,
Church in
Dr.
Chicago and the CEO
Thank you.
of Project H.O.O.D.
Thank you all.
We thank the Friends of the Bohm Theater and Intercollegiate Studies Institute and all of the community partners who made this night possible. If you enjoyed yourself, please tell a friend. We do want these seats to be full for all of the guest speakers that we invite to our community. Safe travels home.
Bless y'all. Thank you.